Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 45 books that I read in 2024. So I'm going to do my yearly wrap up. I'm going to talk about just my thoughts and opinions on all of these books that I read this year. So because this is probably going to be a long video, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I have to look at my Goodreads, so I'm definitely going to be looking down a lot. So the first book that I read was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, because during Christmas time, I think I maybe started in the fall of last year, so like fall and then Christmas time, I was reading Harry Potter, so that kind of trickled on into the new year. I finished the Harry Potter series throughout the first few months of the year, so I'm gonna just talk about all of them right now, all of the ones that I read this year. So the first one I read was The Goblet of Fire, and I rated that a 4 stars. Don't ask me the plot of any of these individual books, because to me it's just kind of like a whole thing. Like I can't really remember, you know, what happened in which book and everything. But I read The Goblet of Fire. The Order of Phoenix, rated a 3 stars because I feel like that was more like information heavy, I think, what I can remember. And then Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, 4 stars, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, I rated a 5 stars. Overall, I absolutely love the Harry Potter series. This was probably one of the most fun experiences that I have had with reading, like, so far, because it was just so fun to read these books that I like really enjoyed, and then be able to, like, after reading every book, watch the movie that goes along with it that I already knew that I loved. It was just such a fun experience, and I'm so glad that I finally got to read them, because for years and years, like, even when I didn't read all the time, I wanted to read the Harry Potter series. So I'm happy that I finally got to read it, and it did not disappoint at all. Like, I was honestly not surprised, but I was thankful that it was as good as I thought it was gonna be. It's about this boy, Harry, and he grows up not knowing that he is a wizard until one day he gets a letter and he goes to Hogwarts and then realizes that there is this powerful bad guy basically out to get him. And throughout the books it just gets bigger and bigger, and he learns more about this situation at hand. So I did read a few memoirs, so we'll talk about those. So I read Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. It was definitely nice to kind of get to know him better and everything, and I really like that about memoirs, that basically you get to know their story better and see more of their personality through their writing and everything, especially since he did narrate it too. So I read the audiobook, or listened to the audiobook. I really enjoyed that. And then I read Finding Me by Viola Davis, which I knew Viola Davis from How to Get Away with Murder. I used to love that show. But yeah, same with this. It's just cool to see more about their personalities and their life stories, and also the life lessons that come with memoirs, I feel like. And then I listened to None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and this book basically follows these two ladies, and they find out that they share the same birthday. One of the ladies has this like really popular podcast, and then the other lady's just kind of a nobody basically. But they decide to do a podcast together where the podcast lady kind of interviews the other lady about her life, because she says that she has a lot of interesting stories to tell, and things just keep getting weirder and weirder, and you know, secrets are unraveling. So I rated that a 4 stars. So then I read As Good as Dead. I also listened to this, I think. I did a lot of audiobook listening this year, and I also have this one, so I should probably hold it up. So I read As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. I wanted to finish this trilogy of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder so bad, so I finally just ended up listening to it, and it was honestly such a great experience. This book was crazy. Like, it got so crazy. This is the final book of The Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Basically, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is this girl, and in each book she is faced with this little mystery that she has to solve. But in the first book, she is trying to solve an old case that happened in her town. Yeah, I really enjoyed this story, and just Holly Jackson in general. I feel like her mysteries are always so entertaining. Then we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Ooh, I found a bookmark. The amount of bookmarks I have lost this year is crazy. So maybe while I go through these books, I can try to find my bookmarks that I have lost. But yes, Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This was not a very memorable book for me. I listened to a lot of this, and maybe that was the issue, because I'm honestly disappointed that I didn't love it as much as everybody else loves it, because I know it's such a good book just based on everybody else's, you know, love for it. But me personally, I did not enjoy it. Yeah, I rated it a 3 stars, I think, because there were great parts of the book that I thought at the time were good, but it's not something that has stuck with me at all. Maybe if I read this book physically, I would have been more attached and felt more for this, but like even the plot twist and everything that's like supposed to be really crazy about this book, I was like, moving on. I don't know. I feel like it's a me problem because I know this book is supposed to be really good, but it just fell flat for me. So I did listen to a lot of audiobooks this year, specifically Frida McFadden, because her audiobooks are always short and very entertaining in my opinion. So the first one that I listened to this year was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. So this one follows 2 people that just got married and they're house hunting. So they go to this house and they end up getting snowed in there. Like they can't leave the house, so they have to spend the night at this house that they were going to be touring. And it ends up that the previous owner was this psychologist who like recorded her sessions with her patients, then went missing. And so they're kind of listening to these tapes and they have secrets of their own, and then everything kind of just comes to light. I rated that a 4 stars. And then I listened to The Coworker by Frida McFadden, and this one is about this lady, the coworker, who goes missing. And so this lady ends up, you know, having to try to figure out what happened to her coworker. That's basically it. Didn't like this one as much. I rated it a 3 stars, but it was still entertaining. Then I read / listened to 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I really enjoyed this book. It basically follows this group of friends who are road tripping to spring break, I think. Their like RV van thing gets broken down in the middle of the woods, is how I pictured it, off this back road, and they realize that somebody has started shooting at them. But the person tells them that there's somebody in the car or in their van that has a secret that needs to come out, and they won't be able to leave until this comes out. And 5 Survive. I think there's like 6 friends in 5 Survive, so you already know what's gonna go down. And I think I rated that a 4 stars. Okay, then I have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is the first Abby Jimenez book that I have read, and I had heard so many good things about her books, and so I was so excited to see if I liked them. And I'm not the biggest romance fan. I prefer books that are like, you know, more heavy plot with a side plot of romance type of thing. And so, you know, I was obviously a little bit iffy if I was gonna like this because it is a full-on romance book. But I did really enjoy this, and I feel like this is people's least favorite Abby Jimenez book, at least from this little series that she has done. But I really liked this one, and I think so far, I think I've read 2 of her books. So I've read this one and then Yours Truly, and I think this one's my favorite. I honestly think about this book a lot. Whenever I hear this One Country song, I always think about these characters in this book, which is so funny that like I think about characters in books that don't actually exist, but I act like they're out there in the world living their lives. This book follows Alexis and Daniel, and basically they come from completely different worlds. Alexis is this doctor and she lives in the city, and then Daniel lives in this small town that Alexis ends up having her car break down. So Daniel helps her out of that situation, and their relationship just kind of goes from there. And then they have to figure out how they're going to be together when they're from 2 different worlds. So I rated this a 4 stars. I really liked this book. Then I reread Magnolia Parks because this is one of my favorite books ever. Obviously 5 stars. I love this book so much. I wanted to reread this book, the other book, Daisy Hates, because I wanted to continue on with the series. I want to make sure that I was refreshed on everything that happened in it. So I did listen to this, and obviously I really enjoyed it. I rated it a 5 stars. But this book follows Magnolia Parks, and it's basically about this toxic relationship with Magnolia Parks and BJ. Just kind of their back and forth relationship of trying to figure out how to be together, but it just never seems to work for them. And yeah, and it's basically this London high society the group of friends and BJ and Magnolia's relationship. And then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This one I really enjoyed. The first book, like, I was honestly going to rate it a 5-star at one point, but I think it's probably like a 4.5, 4.75 because I really did enjoy this book. And I feel like this was the first book that kind of got me into the fairy tale type of fantasy, like almost Regency fantasy fairy tale, because I realized that type of book is something I really enjoy. This is just like so whimsical and magical, and I really enjoy this type of book. This follows this girl. What is her name? Me in every book. What was this girl's name? Evangeline Fox. And I'll just read you the little synopsis. For as long as she can remember, Evangeline Fox has believed in true love and happy endings until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. So then she has to basically make a deal with the Prince of Hearts, and he ends up stringing her along on his own plans, basically. I rated this book a 4 stars. I rated the second book a 4 stars, and I rated the third book a 3 stars because the third book kind of fell flat for me a little bit. Like, I felt like books 2 and 3 could have been one book. Felt a little dragged on. Then I read The Inmate by Frida McFadden. The Inmate is basically about this lady who is a nurse, and she starts working for this like high security prison while knowing that her ex-boyfriend is in the prison. I rated it a 4 stars. Then I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I absolutely loved this series so much. It is basically about these group of teenagers who all have these special abilities, and they help solve like FBI cold cases which turn into active cases, and it is so much fun. I was very close to rating this first book a 5 stars, but it was a little bit of a 5-star read, honestly, because this book was just so good. Like, just such a page turner. I enjoyed every second of it. So the first one, probably just, you know, 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. I'm trying to be a little bit more lenient about my 5 stars because it's like, if I was thoroughly entertained and I couldn't find anything wrong with it, why not give it a 5 stars? That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I read the whole series, so book 2 I rated a 4 stars, 3 I rated a 4 stars, 4 I rated a 4 stars, and then I did read the little novella, but I didn't read that one. I just had so much fun with all of these books. They were all so good. I think the first one was the best though, in my opinion, just because it was so new and like exciting, I guess, but I did really like all of them. So then I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and this follows the best friend from the first book and then this guy who is a new doctor at the hospital that the girl works at. And at first they kind of make a bad impression because the guy actually has really bad anxiety, and so she just thinks he's being really rude to her when really he's just really anxious. And so I think they end up like writing letters back and forth to each other, and that kind of helps the girl understand that like, no, he's not being rude, he just doesn't really know how to, you know, act in front of her, I guess. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I rated it a 4 stars. So then I listened to Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings, and this is in the same world as Magnolia Parks and it happens at the same time, but this follows different characters. This follows Daisy Hates, and she is a part of this family who is basically this gang, and her brother Julian is the gang lord, and they steal paintings and just do bad things, and she kind of has to try to keep them in line in her own way, and she ends up in this relationship with Christian, who is like really good friends with Magnolia Parks and everybody. Daisy Hates books has just more of a plot than Magnolia Parks, but I still really enjoyed them both. So 5 stars. Then I read The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and honestly this was probably my least favorite Frida McFadden book. I rated it a 3 stars, but honestly I might even rate it a 2 stars because the characters were so unlikable, and I could not get over how unlikable they were, because it basically follows this married couple and they're both teachers, and then there's this girl in the school that the previous year was said to have a relationship with one of the teachers, and then the teacher got fired for it. So it's also following her point of view, and everybody has secrets and everybody is kind of morally gray, and it's like there's nobody that you're really rooting for. It's like you don't like any of these characters. I kind of didn't like that there wasn't anybody positive or anything good. It was just like kind of a downer to read, honestly. So I listened to The Locked Door by Frida McFadden as well. I read a whole bunch of Frida McFadden because I was just listening so much. I didn't even rate this one because they were all starting to run together at this point. So I did take a little bit of Frida McFadden break after this book. But this one follows this lady who her father was sent to prison years ago when she was a little girl because he was a murderer. Years later, the same murders, how he murdered these girls, starts happening again, and she's trying to figure out how she's connected to this situation because I think she like knows the girls that keep going missing currently, and she's like, what is going on? How am I connected to this? But yeah, it's not really memorable for me, so probably like a 3 stars. So then I read Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings, and this was my favorite so far in the series. This was so good, but also so sad, like so sad. But I can't tell you anything that happens in this book because it's part of the series, but still Magnolia Park's world, and I rated this a 5 stars. I was sobbing. So then I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I will not be continuing this series to start off. Well, series meaning the duology. I'm not going to read the second book of this because I did not enjoy this book. I don't think this is my type of read. I'm not sure if I'm into the war scene. I don't know if I like that, but that's basically what this book is about, are these 2 writers, and they share this connection where both of their typewriters are connected to each other and they're magical. And so when one writes, the other one can get the message, basically. Yeah, they end up writing back and forth, and they don't realize that they're rivals in their job of writing for this newspaper, and then they end up going to war. I don't know. I just wasn't really entertained by this book, honestly. I liked the story, and there were definitely some good parts about it, so I rated it a 3 stars. It's kind of a short book too, but I was really just like skimming through it and trying to finish this by the second half of the book. I was just not. I was over it. Then I listened to First Light Wins by Ashley Elston, and I really enjoyed this book. I have like this like large print book, and I actually love it. Like, it's so floppy. This follows this lady who is like basically a con artist. She goes around and has like different identities, and she works for this man who she doesn't even know, but she works for him, and he just assigns her different tasks, and you know, she'll do whatever he wants her to do basically in these different identities. And she's in this one identity where she's engaged to this man, and she basically has to find out what he's doing that's bad and stop him from doing it, I'm pretty sure. But she ends up actually really liking him. Things kind of start to unravel. I didn't rate this one because it was a audiobook, and I just kind of felt like I didn't connect to it as well as I would have reading it, so I just didn't rate it. But I'd say probably a 4 stars. So then I read Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman, and it's about this lady, Maria Owens, and she is a witch, and she's discovered by this lady who teaches her how to use her magic, raises her, and it kind of follows her whole life, and it has so many good like life lessons in this book. I honestly loved it so much, and I was expecting more of like a just entertaining witchy read, which it did have those elements, but also just like so many good lessons about life that I was not expecting, but really enjoyed it. So I rated this a 4 stars, but it's like a 4.5. Like, I really did enjoy this book. It would have been a 5 if not for the fact that it was slow in some points. Like, some points I was bored and had to listen to it, but I really did enjoy this book. So then I finally finished the Truly Devious series. This is the last one, The Hand on the Wall. Truly Devious is about this girl who goes to Ellingham Academy because she wants to solve the murders, or the murder mystery type of thing that happened there years and years ago. Then she ends up getting into her own mysteries that she has to solve on top of the one that happened years and years ago. I definitely enjoyed this series, but I don't know, something about Maureen Johnson's writing, if I can remember, was not my cup of tea. I don't remember why. I think there was too many descriptions or something that I didn't enjoy, but the story was really good. So I think I rated this one a 4 stars. I thought it was nice nice wrap up to the trilogy. Then I read one of my favorite books from this year, which was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Marr. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did. I literally just got the audiobook on Libby. I didn't even own this book, and I was like, might as well just see what it's about because I've heard, you know, mixed reviews, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to physically read it, but I was like, well, it's available on Libby, I could just give it a try. And I'm so glad that I did, because this is one of my favorite books from this year. I love this book so much, and I think it kind of made me realize more of my reading taste, I guess. This follows this girl, Evie Sage, and she's just like so bubbly and happy and full of life, and she ends up working for the villain. So she's the assistant to the villain, and there's this situation where she basically has to, you know, be the assistant to the villain, and everything that ends up coming to progressively worse and worse. But it's so good, and there's like the little talking frog, and he is the cutest thing ever. Well, he doesn't talk, but he holds up little signs, and it's the cutest thing ever. It's just, it was such a funny book, but I felt like it had such deeper meaning to it, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I rated this a 5 stars. I loved this book so much. And then I went straight into Apprentice to the Villain, which I also loved so much. I felt like this was a little bit more of like all over the place with the plot. A lot happened in this book, and I think maybe if I went back I'd rate this a 5 stars, but I rated it a 4 just because it did feel a little like all over the place, and it was kind of hard for me to grasp what exactly was going on. But I think that if I read this again, it could be a 5 stars, because this was also really enjoyable and had the same kind of underlying deeper meanings to it, which I really appreciated. So then I listened to The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and this follows this girl who ends up getting a job as a caretaker for this lady who is said to have murdered her whole family when she was younger. And then the lady ends up being able to communicate with her and tell her story, and then there ends up being this kind of current case that happens. This sounds like basically every other mystery thriller ever. I did enjoy this, but it wasn't very memorable at all. I enjoyed it while I was listening to it, but haven't thought about it since, so I think it's like a 3 stars. So then I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, and this follows this lady who works for this security guard kind of company, and she has to be the bodyguard, the undercover bodyguard for this famous actor. And I really liked this book. I liked Catherine Center's writing, I think because she does like mainly dialogue, and I really enjoy that because it's just so fast-paced. Yeah, I just thought it was a quick, short, cute read. So I rated it a 4 stars. Then I listened to Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. It's about this girl who goes to this island and is working as a tour guide, and she uncovers this mystery of the family that used to live there years and years ago. And I really don't remember this book very well, but I'd say I rated it 3 stars if I had to. And then I listened to Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and this was a good one. I really liked this one. It's kind of similar to None of This Is True in the way that it has the podcast aspect in the audiobook, and I heard somebody review this book, and that's why I wanted to pick it up, and they said that it was really nice to see actual like difference in personality in a thriller, which does not happen very often, and I can relate to that because especially Frida McFadden, it's like there's no personality in her characters, and I think maybe that's why it's kind of an issue with her books. This book follows this girl who years ago was said to have killed her best friend, but she doesn't remember anything that happened that night, and then this podcaster wants to kind of find out what happens and starts interviewing everybody, interviewing her, and tries to uncover what actually happened that night. So I rated that. I didn't rate this book either because it was an audiobook and I read it really fast, but I think I rated it 4 stars. So I listened to Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz, and I actually really enjoyed this book. It was so interesting to hear about her life, like being in a cult, and especially since One Tree Hill is my favorite TV show, it was really cool seeing Bethany Joy Lenz's like life story, and it was actually a crazy story. I read The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. This is like a part of the X-Hex series, I guess, by her, and I loved the first 2 books. This one fell a little flat. I still really enjoyed it. I just felt like the plot wasn't as strong as the other books. I guess. So I rated it a 3 stars, but it follows these two people and they actually kind of work together. Like the girl works for Bowen Penhallow and kind of collects magical artifacts for him, and they end up going to this house not knowing that the other person is going to be there, and they end up going back in time on accident, and then they have to try to figure out how they're going to get back to the present day. But that plot is just not that strong, so I rated it a 3 stars. The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This was actually his debut novel and it was very good. I have been wanting to read this book for so long, but every time I picked it up I was like, I don't know if I like this. I thought it was going to be kind of too cozy because it's a cozy mystery, but I honestly really enjoyed it. It follows this retirement community and a murder happens on the retirement community, and the Thursday Murder Club, which is a group of these retired people that live in the community, end up working to solve the murder, and it follows like a bunch of different point of views and everything, and I really enjoyed this. Not only did it have like the cozy mystery, but it also kind of touched on these people's perspectives on life, being in a retirement home, looking back at their life. So I really enjoyed this book. 4 stars. Then we have one of my favorite books of the year. Like, this and Assistant to the Villain was so good to me and kind of made me realize that I like this type of, I don't even know what it is, what genre this is. It's like fantasy. It's kind of like cozy fantasy because the stakes aren't too high and it's just so much fun to me. So this follows Theodora Eddings, and half of her soul was taken from her. Her and her cousin end up going to London because it is wedding season or whatever they call it. The London season? I don't know. But basically her cousin is trying to find a husband and she is trying to not mess up her cousin's chances of finding a husband, but her cousin kind of pushes her to figure out how to get the other half of her soul back. It was so good. It was way more than that synopsis. It was honestly so good, and I need to go back and annotate this book. It's just a short and sweet read, but also so good. 5 stars if you couldn't tell. So then I read The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. I also listened to this book, and this follows 2 authors and they're kind of like enemies. They're invited by this famous author to go to her house and spend Christmas with her, and there's a bunch of other people, like her family members and other people there, and she goes missing, and it's like somebody there was trying to kill her. And those 2 authors work together to find out what happened and who the killer is, basically. And I didn't read this because I read it so quickly. So, and then I have Ward D by Frida McFadden, and I honestly really liked this book. This might be my favorite Frida McFadden book, but I don't know if that's just because it's my latest Frida McFadden book. This one basically follows this girl who has to spend the night in this Ward D psychiatric unit for like an internship type of thing, and then she kind of has to figure out who to trust, and like there's this girl there that used to be friends with her, but she's in psychiatric unit now, and it's like you don't know who to trust, and things get really crazy. But I really enjoyed this one. I think it's 4 stars. And then I also just read the little novella at the end of this book, which is like The Lord Sorcerer, and I didn't read this because it was like 44 pages, but I thought it was pretty good, and I was just happy to get a little bit more out of this book. So I'm definitely going to have to read the rest of the series, because if you get one thing from this video, it's this book and Assistant to the Villain and Magnolia Parks. Those are like my favorites of the year, basically. And then we can go through stats really quickly. So I did read 45 books this year, and I read 17,479 pages, and my shortest book was the little novella that I just talked about, which was The Lord Sorcerer, and then my longest book was Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, which was 912 pages. My average book length was 388 pages, and then my average rating is a 3.9. If I liked the book, I'm most likely rating it a 3 or 4. So yeah, oh my goodness, this was such a long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about all of my books I read this year. I definitely gave way too much detail because I've been filming for over an hour, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, stick around for more videos this year because I'm hoping to be more consistent with my posting. So we'll see how that goes. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.